Chapter 1901, Jian and 4. Naive and innocent, young Luo Feng sipped her tea. Within this kind of influential family, would there really be someone with a naive and innocent personality? Qi Su, Jian and fancies you. Qi Su, who just took a sip of tea, suddenly spat out after hearing young Luo Feng's words. Luckily, she was fast in dodging and did not get sprayed. I wasn't deliberate. Qi Su wiped his mouth, with awkwardness across his face. I was only shocked by your words. I've only met her a few times, so how could she have fallen for me? Young Luo Feng quirked her brow. I will not meddle in your relationship. But my request to my followers is that concubines are forbidden. Otherwise, there'll be countless troubles and it'll affect my work efficiency. Furthermore, since she came from Hua Xia, she had already found the matter of men having 3 wives and 4 concubines repulsive. Luckily, she found Yun Xiao. He would never let these troubles affect her and would personally settle those who fancied him without giving them an opportunity. I know. Furthermore, he had never considered about taking in concubines. In addition, young Luo Feng slowly stretched as her expression was of laziness. I came here to find Ji Jutian, and if I find out that she deceived me, or even brings trouble to me, I will never let her off. As of now, she only saw that Jian fancied Qi Su and did not notice other emotions. If Jian attempted to do something, then don't blame her for being impolite. Miss Yun, if you feel that Jian deceived us, we can leave the Jian family. Qi Su frowned. If Jian was really in love with him, then he wouldn't wish to stay here. No need. I feel that it's easier to locate Ji Jutian in this Jian family. Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes. Oh right, have your men continue their search. Tell me if they locate Yun Xiao's whereabouts. Okay. Qi Su nodded. I've sent out the majority of Qi family's men to search, and in all likelihood, they will locate his whereabouts soon. Hearing his words, young Luo Feng did not say anything further as she entered a state of deep pondering. Oh right, Qi Su seemed to recall something as he said, I owe the second prince a favor and I intend to visit him in a few days. Young Luo Feng's eyes flickered as she said, tell me the second prince's situation. Qi Su was startled as he looked up at young Luo Feng. The second prince and his wife are a married couple very much in love. When his wife was alive, the second prince only indulged her, to the extent of not stepping into any maids' or concubines' rooms. Unfortunately, the second prince's wife passed away due to sickness a few years back. Young Luo Feng did not speak and continued listening. The second prince's wife had a sister, and before she passed away, her last words were that she hoped that her sister would become the second prince's second wife. As the second prince belonged to Tianqi Kingdom's imperial family, the emperor would never allow him to not take in a second wife. To prevent her daughter from being bullied, the second prince's wife naturally hoped for her biological sister to take her position. This was much better than the second prince marrying a stranger. As for the second prince's wife's last wishes, the second prince would comply if he could. However, who would have expected that the second prince's wife's sister would also fall sick not long after that? Both siblings fell sick in succession. Young Luo Feng lightly stroked her chin and entered into deep thought. Naturally, the emperor did not permit the marriage and instead, preferred the Jian family's second young miss, Jian Yi. Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes. Tell the second prince that I can save his wife's sister. Furthermore, I can help him ascend the throne. Chapter 1902, Jian and 5. Astonishment flooded Qi Su's gaze. According to his understanding of young Luo Feng, usually she wasn't willing to help others. Miss Yun, your request is, Qi Su pondered and asked. I want him to listen to my orders. All along, young Luo Feng had a huge appetite and wanted to control this Tianqi kingdom in one go, and Qi Su believed that she had the capability to do so. Tell these things to the second prince, and as for the request, I will personally inform him of it. Young Luo Feng slightly smiled as her pitch-black eyes were filled with confidence. Then I'll look for the second prince tomorrow. Just as both of them were conversing, footsteps sounds could be heard outside. In an instant, both of them stopped their conversation. Qi Su, resolve the problems you stirred up. Towards women, you have to be decisive and ruthless to prevent future troubles. Young Luo Feng said with indifference. She had already reminded Qi Su. If he were to procrastinate and cause future trouble, then it would be his own problem. Regarding the matters of feelings, one had to be firm in rejection and not give others hope first then despair shortly after. I understand. Qi Su helplessly sighed. He did not believe Jian had fallen for him, but he trusted young Luo Feng without a doubt. The words young Luo Feng said would never be wrong. Just as they were speaking, the door was pushed open. Jian saw Qi Su the moment she entered and smiled. Young Master Qi, I have some matters to talk to you about. Would it be convenient to chat somewhere else? She glanced at young Luo Feng within the room. She clearly did not wish for her to know about their conversation. There's no need. You can speak right now. Qi Su flatly rejected her. Young Luo Feng wasn't an outsider and there was nothing she couldn't listen to. Jian stared blankly as her expression was of hesitation. To a woman, there are some words they couldn't say in front of outsiders. Just as Jian had a worried frown, young Luo Feng's bewitching voice sounded from the room. Qi Su, follow her. I've said what I have to say. You should know what to do. With young Luo Feng's prompting, Qi Su did not reject Jian. He nodded and said, lead the way. Jian felt mixed and complicated feelings. She had indeed wanted to speak with Qi Su, but seeing how obedient Qi Su was to young Luo Feng, it caused her to be unhappy. However, she did not reveal discontent. Instead, there was still a gentle smile. Young Master Qi Su, please follow me. In reality, Jian very much wished to bring Qi Su to her room to converse. At the same time, she was clear that if she had done so, Qi Su would certainly be unwilling. This young man had placed too much emphasis on the difference between men and women. However, wasn't such a man rare? In the rear rock garden, Jian stopped and turned to Qi Su. She was silent for a moment before asking, Young Master Qi Su, what's your relationship with Miss Yun? Perhaps due to young Luo Feng's previous reminder, Qi Su felt that Jian's question was too deliberate and caused him discomfort. Miss Yun is my friend. Coming to the Tianqi kingdom this time was to accompany her to look for Ji Jutian. Friend. Hearing his words, Jian relaxed. I was originally under the impression. Under what impression? Qi Su frowned and asked. Jian pursed her lips and did not answer Qi Su's question. Her eyes then fixed on Qi Su. Young Master Qi Su, actually, I fell for you the first time I met you a few years ago. Immediately, Qi Su's fingers stiffened. Perhaps due to young Luo Feng's previous reminder, he did not appear too shocked. Chapter 1903, Jian 6. Looking at his peaceful expression, Jian's eyes darkened. Young Master Qi, could you possibly take me as your wife? Apologies, I'm unwilling. His words were very direct, causing Jian's heart to be ripped apart and she felt a heart-wrenching pain. She already knew that Qi Su wouldn't be fond of a concubine's daughter. But after she heard his rejection in person, she was still upset. I know young Master Qi wouldn't fancy me because I'm only the daughter of a Jian family's concubine. However, I only beg of you to help me this once. Could you pretend to marry me? After I leave the Jian family, I will return your freedom. Jian's expression was somewhat pale. She looked up at Qi Su, while her eyes were filled with hope. The young man before her was her last saving straw. No one other than him was capable of helping her. Jian, I already have a fiance and she's waiting for me in the Luo Feng kingdom. Right now, you are requesting that I pretend to marry you. Then if my fiance were to find out, how am I to explain myself? Qi Su's expression had already cooled down. If it weren't for the fact that Jian had helped him in the past, he would have directly rejected with, how could I break my fiance's heart for a stranger like you? Jian looked somewhat as though she was suffering. So it turns out that Qi Su already has a fiancé. Your fiancé, does she have a powerful status? Only a person with powerful status was worthy of Qi Su, and a concubine's daughter like her could never marry him. Qi Su frowned. Jian, what do you mean? Would I be a snob? Let me tell you, even if the woman I love is a beggar, she's still my beloved. Do you know a year ago, when my master went missing and I was mistreated by the Qi family, everyone distanced themselves and only she stayed by my side. In my life, I will never let her down. Jian chuckled with a deathly pale complexion. My apologies, I was wrong. How could the man she loved be a snob? Otherwise, she wouldn't have longed for him for so long. Young Master Qi, I'm also at my wit's end and so, came looking for you. Can you help me? I believe that your fiancé must be very kind-hearted and she'll understand you. Jian wanted to grab on Qi Su's sleeve but had been flung away by him. Qi Su's expression revealed impatience. My fiance is indeed very kind. But kind-hearted women would still have high requirements in terms of feelings. Even though it would be a fake marriage, what woman could tolerate their man going through a wedding ceremony with another woman? Jian'an's expression became increasingly pale. She was at her wit's end, but was he still unwilling to help her? He wouldn't do even if it was fake. She didn't even request a real marriage. If Qi Su wasn't willing to help, there was only a dead end for her mother. Young Master Qi, a few years ago, you and your master came to the Tianqi kingdom. When you encountered danger and were surrounded by others, your master wasn't by your side. At that time, you asked me to locate your master and inform her of your predicament. Originally, Qi Su still felt somewhat grateful to Jian'an, but after hearing her words, the sole trace of gratitude disappeared. I am very grateful that you notified my master, and she also repaid your favor by giving you a few stalks of spirit herbs. Those herbs were very valuable and your mother was seriously ill at that time. It was master's spirit herbs that saved your mother from the death's door. Qi Su looked at Jian'an. Therefore, I've repaid your favor of before. I've always been someone who repaid a single favor with multiple favors. As such, when you were bullied by your sister, I also stood up and chased her away for you. Chapter 1904, Jian'an 7. If you intend to threaten me with the favor, then I can only break all ties with you. He had a bottom line. He could repay a single favor with 10 favors, but the precondition was to not touch his bottom line. Young Master Qi Su, seeing that Qi Su was about to leave, Jian'an knelt on the ground with tears on her face. My father knows that you are the Qi family's young master and is forcing me to marry you. If I'm not able to do so, he'll kill my mother. She's my only kin and the most important person in my life. How could I turn a blind eye to her? Please help me. As long as we get married, my father will let my mother go. Don't tell me you are going to leave me in the lurch. Her cries were very heart-wrenching and her eyes were thoroughly red. Once she recalled the price her mother was about to pay, her heart had fiercely clenched tight. However, Jian'an had never reflected on her actions. She brought everything upon herself as she was the cause for Jian Bowen to release such an order. She wouldn't meet her end if she hadn't sought for death. If she did not find Jian Bowen to say all those words, how would he use her mother's life to threaten her? Ultimately, it was her own fault. Qi Su's back stiffened and a complicated feeling flashed through his eyes. He deeply sighed. I would never hurt my fiancé's heart because of you. In my heart, she's more important. His words were already very ruthless. After he finished speaking, he slowly walked back. Jian'an collapsed on the ground and her eyes filled with despair as she glanced at Qi Su's back while he walked away. Qi Su, are you honestly going to be so heartless? To prevent her from being hurt, you could disregard a person's life. I've begged you like that, yet why aren't you willing to help me? If you aren't willing, that man will definitely kill my mother. She simply couldn't understand how could Qi Su be so cold and ruthless. Saving them both was as easy as lifting his hands. Furthermore, it was only a fake marriage. Even though his fiancée would be heartbroken, wouldn't it be resolved if he explained to her? In addition, as a man, how could he be unable to suppress his fiancée? By having a mother like that, the influence Jian'an received was very deep. In their world, men were heavens and an existence they had to look up at. She did not believe that Qi Su's fiancé could raise any disagreements. Furthermore, if a fake marriage could cause her to be heartbroken, what if Qi Su were to take in concubines in the future? Her mother said that it was a matter of course for men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Preventing a man from taking a concubine was disrespectful and being unfilial to their parents-in-law. A daughter-in-law like that was destined to have fingers pointed at them. Qi Su did not know of Jian'an's train of thought, but after hearing her words, he had already decided to leave the Jian family. However, as the skies were already getting dark, he sighed and said, "It's quite late and I'll look for Miss Yun tomorrow to speak about leaving. I'm sure she must be resting now." Furthermore, he doubted that the Jian family could cause any waves with just a night. Thinking of this, he stepped into his room and undressed after closing the door, preparing to take a rest. However, before Qi Su slept for long, he sensed that his door was pushed open and a stranger's aura entered. He did not open his eyes, wanting to know what that woman intended to do. As he learned medical skills from Yun Yueching at a young age, he subconsciously tightened his 5 organs, afraid that he would be subjected to a surprise attack. Chapter 1905, Jian and 8. However, that person did not use any toxic smoke or try to poison him. Instead, she walked to his bedside. Shortly after, he heard the sound of tearing. Qi Su could no longer restrain himself and opened his eyes, then looked at the young lady standing by his bed. Currently, her complexion was pale as before, while her clothing had been torn, with 2 lumps of meat appearing before his sight. Jianen, what are you thinking of doing? Qi Su laughed grimly. Seduction. Unfortunately, this is useless. To me, there is no difference between your body and the bones of the dead. Young Master Qi Su, I'm sorry. I have been forced to my wit's end. Jianan's face was wretched. If you were willing to help, I wouldn't have been forced to this extent. Qi Su rolled over and stood up from the bed, with chilliness across his face. I originally wanted to leave after tonight, but since you've forced me, then I'll leave immediately. All ties shall be broken between us. Leave. Jianan miserably smiled. That is beyond your control. After speaking, she suddenly screamed. Her scream was very abrupt under the night scene and also interrupted the night serenity. Qi Su wasn't stupid, and from the start he assumed that Jianan wanted to seduce him. After hearing her scream, he understood her real motive. At this moment, his expression completely changed. Jianan, are you using your reputation as a wager? Do you think I'll act according to your wish? Even if you pour dirty water on me, I will never marry you. He honestly did not expect that Jianan would go to such an extent. At the same time, he felt regret. If he knew Jianan would do this, he wouldn't have come to the Jian family. I know you won't be controlled by others and would not marry me because of this. However, what if this matter were to be known by your fiance? Do you think she'll believe you? Jianan pressed in closer to Qi Su. However, if you help me and complete a fake marriage with me, I'll explain it to your fiance in the near future. Jianan kept her adoration for him and made a suggestion. This would be a transaction. What do you think? Right now, she did not hope to have a conjugal union with Qi Su. She merely wanted to save her mother. Qi Su revealed a mocking smile. Do you think I'll trust you? I only know I have to make a lightning-fast decision right now to prevent anyone from having an opportunity to pester me. Qi Su, why are you so heartless? Jianan's eyes were filled with pain. To you, this should be an easy feat. As long as you casually deal with this, you could save a life. Even if you disregard my previous favor, you shouldn't be so heartless. I honestly didn't expect that the man I loved for numerous years would turn his back and leave me in the lurch. Qi Su sneered. Save someone who schemed against me? I'm not that kind. Since that's the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Jianan revealed a desolate smile and slowly shut her eyes. In her heart she had already been extremely disappointed by Qi Su. If he was willing to help her at this moment, perhaps she would explain to others that it was a misunderstanding. Right now, since you was being heartless, then don't blame me for being immoral. Suddenly, Jianan opened her eyes and her gaze contained a resolute glint. At this moment, a wave of footsteps could be heard, and shortly after, a group of men broke through the door and entered, encircling the entire room rapidly. The first one entering was Jian Bowen and Jian Yi. After both of them witnessed the situation in the room, the former revealed a frown while the latter revealed disdain. Chapter 1906, Jian and 9. Miss Yun. Simultaneously, Qi Su saw the white-robed lady standing by the door. His lips moved and his eyes revealed helplessness, while his expression seemed to be saying that he didn't know this situation would happen. Young Luo Feng crossed her hands as she lazily leaned on the doorframe. Her wicked eyes quirked up as a smile surfaced on her lips. With her understanding of Qi Su, he would never commit such a mistake. Therefore, there was only one reason. Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes as her smile deepened, yet it contained endless chilliness. However, she did not intend to resolve this matter on Qi Su's behalf. If he couldn't even resolve such a small problem, how could she believe in his capabilities? It's late. Settle this as soon as possible. She lazily stretched and said indifferently. Her words meant, hurry and resolve this issue and don't disturb my rest. HMPH. Jian Bowen snorted as his expression sank. What exactly happened? Jianan glanced at Qi Su and bit her lips, revealing a humiliated expression. Father, I'm also not sure what happened. Earlier on, I suddenly fainted when I went to sleep. After waking up, I realized that I was in young Master Qi Ye's room. As for other matters, I'm not sure. Her meaning was very obvious. Originally, she was sleeping, but was inflicted with sleeping smoke and had even been captured by Qi Su. Upon seeing her untidy clothing, everyone could guess what had happened earlier on. I don't believe you. Why would others molest you instead of someone else? Jian Yi sneered as mocking could be seen across her face. I think it's because of your improper behavior on normal occasions that allowed others to take advantage of you. Jian An's expression changed as her body froze. Even though she guessed that her actions would arouse Jian Yi to humiliate her, she did not turn back because of her mother. Even so, after hearing Jian Yi's words, she still felt it hard to swallow. Jianen, someone like you dares to have delusions of young Master Ji. Jian Yi raised her chin and spoke with an overbearing attitude. You had better return to look in the mirror. With your appearance, you're simply a toad wanting to eat swan's flesh. Right now, you've lost your chastity and it's all the more impossible to marry young Master Ji. Jian An's head was lowered, seemingly about to land on the floor. Anyone who saw her would feel sympathy for her. Year, Jian Bowen frowned and glanced at Qi Su. His eyes didn't look indifferent as before. Instead, he looked like a father looking at his son-in-law. Since this has happened, then you have to assume responsibility for my daughter and marry her. Oh right, I heard that you're from the Luo Feng Kingdom's Qi family. Your family seems to have several spirit herb mountains. My request isn't much, it's enough to take out 3 as the betrothal gift. Within this continent, as spiritual energy was dense, medicinal herbs could go up by a grade and become spirit herbs. However, for spirit herbs to appear, not only did it require dense spiritual energy, but there was also a requirement of a naturally formed mountain range. Even though other mountain ranges would also have spirit herbs, the quantities could be counted on one hand. It was completely different from those naturally formed mountain ranges that grew spirit herbs. However, the Qi family only had 5 mountain ranges that grew spirit herbs. Yet, the Jian family requested 3 the moment they opened their mouth. Would there be something so good in this world? Qi Su laughed grimly as his eyes revealed a chill. As expected, these people are all jackals of the same tribe, avaricious and insatiable. Chapter 1907, Jian and 10. Do you think a concubine's daughter is worth the price of 3 mountain ranges? Qi Su's handsome face contained scorn as his eyes were brimming with mocking. His voice was cold and detached, causing Jian An's heart to shiver at the same time. She tightly clenched her fists as her heart seemed to be squeezed tight. It was so painful that it was hard to bear. Originally, she thought she could let go of her feelings and make it a transaction. She then realized that a single sentence of his could send her down to the 18 depths of hell. Young Luo Feng, who stood by the door, looked up at Qi Su. She didn't expect that he would say such hurtful words. However, she still did not intend to help Qi Su. She believed that he could resolve this problem. Jian Bowen's complexion turned white, then red. He originally thought that Qi Su would use every means to obtain her after having committed such a beastly act towards his daughter. Furthermore, with this scandal, it would definitely affect Qi Su's position in the Luo Feng Kingdom. As such, using 3 mountain ranges as the price wasn't excessive. Jian Bowen breathed deeply and asked, if you're unwilling to take out 3 mountain ranges, then I'm sure 1 would suffice. 1 mountain range was his bottom line. I'm sorry. In my heart, she's not even worth a single copper. Qi Su looked up, and his cold and expressionless sight landed on Jian Bowen. Jian looked up with wide eyes as she gazed at Qi Su in disbelief. Her lips were even trembling as her face was colorless. This man could be heartless to this extent. Could it be that he doesn't have the slightest sympathetic feelings for me? Qi Su, what exactly are you doing? Jian Bowen's expression turned chilly. You molested my daughter and you're telling me to let you off. If this spreads out, how could she marry in the future? It is none of my business if she is unable to get married in the future. This is her own fault and I've never touched a single finger of hers. You didn't touch her, then what's with her clothing? Don't tell me she tore it herself. Jian Bowen coldly smiled and spoke with contempt. He clearly understood his daughter. Even though her heart was higher than the heavens, she would disdain to do something like this. Since she said I took her, then please invite someone to check her body. Check if she's still a virgin. Qi Su had one hand behind his back as he spoke indifferently. Jian shook uncontrollably. She then pointed at Qi Su. Qi Su, you dared to commit such acts against me. You've taken me by force yet you want me to have my body checked. If news of me getting shamed this way was to spread out and everyone knows that I lost my chastity, how could I continue living? Are you intending to anger me to death? Tears streamed down from her cheeks and she tightly bit her lips. Her expression was of humiliation, just like she had been shamed by Qi Su. Qi Su, I know you have a fiance but you neglected my previous favor of saving you, and harmed me this way. Shouldn't you take responsibility? Qi Su coldly spoke. I request for an examination of your body. If you've really lost your chastity, then I'll marry you. If you didn't, then it means that everything was done by yourself. Hearing his words, Jian was jolted. Just as she wanted to continue arguing, a woman ran in the room and staggered. My dear daughter, this ungrateful man dares to treat you like that. Examine her body must be examined. Hurry and find an experienced old woman. I want the person who held my daughter to take responsibility. Chapter 1908. Jian 11. Jian's expression completely changed. Examine her body, then wouldn't everything be for naught? This mother of mine is truly unable to achieve anything but is good at spoiling things. If it weren't for her, how could I be forced to this degree? Right now, she was still causing me trouble. Mother, Jian shouted. This was supposedly a warning shout but when her mother heard it, all she heard was a grievance. My daughter, rest assured. Mother will help you. Quickly find someone to examine her body. Jian's expression interchanged between ash and pale. Actually, I'm not sure if Qi Su did take advantage of me. After all, I was unconscious at that time, but the fact that he tore my clothes and molested me is a fact. When I woke up, I also saw him pressed on me. Her words were reasonable and others couldn't refute her argument. Qi Su, after speaking, she glanced towards Qi Su, so what if you didn't take my body? You've seen me all over and tore my clothes. Don't tell me you don't have to take responsibility. Jian Bowen also felt that Jian's words were reasonable and assumed a strict face on the spot. Young Master Qi Su, my daughter is innocent and your actions equate to ruining her purity. I don't care if you've taken her or not, but you have to assume responsibility today. Qi Su smiled. Jian repeatedly claimed that I pressed myself on her. I would like to ask if you've ever seen someone raping a woman with their clothes on. Everyone at the scene stared blankly. Earlier on, they hadn't managed to take notice of this point. That's right, Qi Si clearly has his clothes on, so why did Jian claim that the other party attempted to molest her? Jian already thought of an excuse. She lowered her eyes. Seeing that I woke up and realized that the situation was unfavorable, he then put on his clothes. Is that so? Then, in that case, you've seen my naked body. I'd like to ask you, is my mole on my left shoulder or right shoulder? A smile surfaced on Qi Su's face as his eyes radiated chilliness. Jian was startled. How could I possibly know if his mole is on his left or right shoulder? However, she knew that she could never answer the question he raised. In addition, there were only two answers and if she randomly made a guess, there was a 50% chance of getting the right answer. Thinking for a moment, Jian answered, left shoulder. Qi Su smiled. Upon seeing his smile, Jian panicked. No, I recalled wrongly. It's the right shoulder. Congratulations, your answer is, with a tearing sound, Qi Su took off his clothes and his two smooth shoulders were revealed before everyone, wrong. There's no mole on my shoulders. Jian's knees went weak and she nearly collapsed on the floor. She only managed to stabilize herself by leaning on her mother. Qi Su actually tricked me. How could he be so ruthless? In this current situation, coupled with Jian's flustered expression, even the slow-witted Jian Yi noticed the problem. She widened and tightly clasped her mouth in surprise. After a long time, she breathed deeply and said, Jian, you dared to use your chastity as a wager to frame someone. Tisk tisk, by doing such a shameless thing, you've thrown our Jian family's face. Father, I feel that we should chase Jian and her mother out of the family. After she spoke, the woman instantly became flustered. She hastily pulled on Jian's arm. Quick, hurry and beg your father. We cannot leave the Jian family. Mother, Jian An's voice was very feeble. She knew that she was doomed this time. Chapter 1909, Jian and 12. Why are you so useless, to even make your dad worry about you? Apologize to him right now so that you don't get chased out the family. The woman berated. Jian An tightly bit her lips without uttering a word. She was tired, really very tired. For her mother to stay in the Jian family, she was already extremely tired. Now that the truth is revealed, are you still forcing me to marry her? Qi Ye's lowered eyes swept past Jian and his tone was of indifference. How can a woman so proficient in scheming enter our Qi family's gates? The complication was resolved. Young Luo Feng stood up and revealed a languid smile under this quiet moonlight. Qi Su, I'm tired. Let's go. All right. Qi Su no longer spoke with the Jian family members and walked to young Luo Feng. He did not wish to stay in this place. Jian Bowen's eyes flickered and he shouted, Hold it. Qi Su, who allowed you to leave? Since I say that you molested Annur, then you must have done so. Let me tell you, you must marry her today or else you won't be taking a single step out of the Jian family. There was a reason why Jian Bowen dared to treat Qi Su like that. There was someone from the Jian family that he had dispatched to the Luo Feng kingdom. That man had stayed there for a few years and had only recently returned to the Tianqi kingdom. After finding out Qi Ye's identity, Jian Bowen had secretly talked to that man to find out about the Qi family's situation. As such, Jian Bowen knew that Qi Ye's powerful master, Yun Yueching, had gone missing. Qi Su currently called the shots in the Qi family. In his eyes right now, Qi Su was a young man that possessed a vast amount of wealth, yet lacked strength. Although he had the Luo Feng kingdom as his backing, didn't his Jian family have the Tianqi kingdom's imperial family to rely on? If he could force Qi Su to marry Jianan, the Qi family's wealth would belong to him at that time. As for Qi Ye's fiance, the Luo Feng kingdom's fourth princess, he did not care about her. Since she was only his fiance, no one would dare to say anything even if he didn't marry her. Furthermore, he did not think that the barbarous princess of Luo Feng kingdom could be compared with his well-educated and docile daughter. Qi Ye's footsteps stopped and sneered as he said, Who do you think you are, to meddle in my marriage? Furthermore, I previously told Jianan that I have a fiance in the Luo Feng kingdom. Won't it do if you don't marry that fiance of yours? Jian Bowen spoke in disapproval. He was honestly unwilling to let go of such an outstanding son-in-law. A cold glint streaked across Qi Ye's eyes. My fiancé is the Luo Feng kingdom's fourth princess while your daughter is only a concubine's daughter. Does she have the qualifications to compare with my fiancé? He originally didn't wish to use status to pressure others, but these people were being unreasonable. He had no choice but to reveal Mu Shuexin's identity. Jianan looked up in shock. It's no wonder he doesn't fancy me. So it turns out, his fiancée is actually the princess. Jian Bowen frowned. My daughter is willing to share her husband with the fourth princess. At that time, it's fine for you to grant her the title of a second madam. Of course, the spirit herb mountain cannot be lacking and there must at least be two. Otherwise, I'll have your reputation swept away. Even if Jianan is willing, I'm not willing to marry her. Qi Su had already walked to young Luo Feng's side. Looking at the lady before her, his expression was filled with remorse. Miss Yun, I'm sorry for interrupting your rest. Young Luo Feng's crossed arms slowly loosened as her lips quirked. She looked at Jian Bowen with a smile as her pitch-black eyes contained a cold glimmer. Chapter 1910, Four Kingdom Tournament 1. Do you know how the Qi family in the Luo Feng kingdom met its end? Young Luo Feng smiled and asked in an absent-minded manner. Jian Bowen was startled. All of a sudden, he recalled what his subordinate told him. It could be said as coincidence, as that subordinate was in the vicinity of the Qi family's residence that day. What's even more coincidental was that he witnessed the scene of the Qi family's destruction. It was said that during a contest of strength, a woman of heavenly god-level cultivation appeared and assisted Qi Su in seizing the Qi family's position. That woman had peerless medical skills and even the emperor of the Luo Feng kingdom who suffered from a terminal illness had been cured by her. Could it be that woman is the person standing before me? Jian Bowen's expression changed. If she possessed heavenly god-level cultivation, then he was truly unable to deal with Qi Su today. Qi Su, let's go. Glancing at Jian Bowen's deathly pale face, she knew that her words had intimidated him. She did not continue to linger as they slowly walked out of the Jian family. Qi Su. Seeing that Qi Su was about to leave, Jian An's complexion became deathly white. She hastily got up and chased him as he left. Her eyes were filled with despair. Could you bear to be so ruthless and abandon me without a care? Don't tell me, you've forgotten how I helped you in the past. Even if you're unwilling to marry me, I'm willing to become your concubine. In reality, the previous Jian would never agree to become a concubine and was more unwilling to follow her mother's footsteps. However, right now, she had fallen for this man. She would rather abandon her dignity and become his concubine. More importantly, only Qi Su could bring her out of the Jian family. Qi Su's footsteps paused. Turning to take a glance at Jian, his handsome face was shrouded in an ice-cold aura. Are you that desperate to leave with me? Not knowing why, Jian felt flustered as she saw Qi Su's expression. Yes, Annur will definitely leave with you. Her mother hastily ran to Jian's side. Annur, even if you enter the Qi family as a concubine, you won't lose your identity. Quickly leave with him, and your father very much wishes for you to marry him too. Qi Su only asked a question, but in the woman's speech, it became Qi Su asking if Jian was willing to leave with him. She had forgotten how Jian had schemed against Qi Su and how he treated her. Since that is the case, Qi Su coldly smiled. Coincidentally, one of my subordinates has yet to wed. I'll gift her to my subordinate then. She couldn't blame him for being heartless. Jian could only blame herself for trying to scheme against him by every possible means. He had never been compassionate towards this type of woman. Jian was stupefied. Perhaps she never expected that her beloved man would say such words. He's treating me like an object and presenting it to someone else. Jian Bowen's expression also had a drastic change. His gaze swept towards young Luo Feng, seemingly pondering over something. After a long time, he clenched his teeth. Annur, leave with him. Father. Jian screamed and her face was filled with disbelief. Be obedient, leave with him. For Qi Su to personally act as the go-between for that subordinate, he must regard him highly. After a while, he would convince that subordinate to work for the Jian family. Annur, her mother consoled her, your father's words are never wrong. Although you're marrying a subordinate, at least you'll be his wife. Furthermore, the Qi family is an influential family in the Luo Feng kingdom and they won't treat you unfairly. What caused Jian to be heartbroken was her mother's words. Her eyes reddened as she staggered and retreated. Chapter 1911. Four Kingdom Tournament 2. Mother, I've been living my entire life for you. You said that a woman must listen to a man's words, so I've been acting in accordance to father's commands. I've also done what you wanted by being an obedient daughter. Even if father tasked me to seduce Qi Su, I've done so. The reason was that if I didn't marry Qi Su, he would come for your life. For you, I wagered having my reputation swept away and falling out with Qi Su because of such an act. However, at the end when father wants to gift me to a subordinate, you're still asking for me to be obedient. Jian felt bitter and hateful. Her entire life was a tragedy. Annur, her mother's voice paused and a trace of remorse flashed through her eyes but disappeared in an instant. Listen to your father, he won't harm you. Jian laughed grimly. She lightly shut her eyes and only looked over at Qi Su after a long time. Alright, Qi Su, I'll leave with you. Miss Yun, Qi Su smiled as his gaze swept towards young Luo Feng. It seems like we haven't come to the Tianqi kingdom in vain. At the very least, I've found a wife for the Qi family's cleaner. In the future, he will be more attentive in sweeping for our Qi family. Jian, who was in complete despair, immediately widened her eyes after hearing his words, and she even trembled. Qi Su intended to gift me to a cleaner. Jian has some strength. Young Luo Feng stroked her chin. Therefore, you should cripple her, lest she bullies the old man. You're right. The cleaner uncle is nearly in his hundreds and how could he withstand Jian's torment? As such, we should cripple her strength. Qi Su nodded in agreement. Jian's expression was deathly while. Similar to thunder exploding in her mind, it became blank in an instant. Qi Su, aren't you being too much? Jian Bowen's expression was ashen as veins bulged on his forehead. He tightly clenched his fist and suppressed his internal fury. In the face of Jian Bowen's fury, Qi Su kept a straight face, seemingly not noticing in the slightest. Young Luo Feng lazily stretched. Qi Su, I'm tired. Then let's leave right now, Qi Su's respectful voice sounded. After that, he grabbed Jian An's lapels and dragged her like a broom towards the gates. Hold it. Just as Jian Bowen wanted to release his fury, he saw the white-robed lady slowly stopping under the moonlight. Her back was to everyone and her domineering voice gradually sounded in this quiet night scene. Whoever dares to take a step forward, I'll break their legs. This sentence caused Jian Bowen's foot to subconsciously pause. He then looked on helplessly at young Luo Feng's departure. However, he was feeling deep regret in his heart. This time, he had lost a daughter and got nothing in return. If he hadn't forced Jian An to marry Qi Su, perhaps. Even if he randomly found someone, he could have exchanged this daughter of his for a sum of money. Family head, are you alright? Jian An's mother weakly stood to one side. She wasn't too upset about her daughter's departure. In her heart, her man was the most important and as long as Jian Bowen was safe and sound, she would be satisfied. Take a look at what kind of daughter you've educated. Jian Bowen slapped her and flung his sleeves before leaving. She stood behind his back while her eyes were filled with guilt. It was all her fault that she hadn't taught her daughter well, thus resulting in the family head to be so furious. Second Prince's estate. A young lady with a pale complexion was nestled against the soft couch. She had an expression of painful suffering as her eyes squeezed shut. Chapter 1912, Four Kingdom Tournament 3. Qi Lauer sat by her side while his eyes were filled with guilt. Ruoer, I didn't take good care of you and if your sister in heaven were to know, she would definitely blame me. Hearing his words, Yu Shenxian slowly opened her tired eyes. A feeble smile surfaced on her pale face. Brother-in-law, this isn't your fault. If you hadn't brought me out of the estate in accordance to sister's last words, I would have already been sent to the third prince as a concubine. But, your illness. Compared to getting sick, I'm even more afraid to become the third prince's concubine. Brother-in-law, did you know? The third prince is very cruel and I heard that he tortured his previous concubine to death. While speaking, the young lady started crying. How could they be so heartless? To actually think of gifting me to the third prince. Her sister, the second prince's previous wife, had been sent to the second prince by those so-called relatives of theirs. Luckily the second prince fell in love with her sister at first sight. He stood his ground against the masses and married her as his wife. After that, he had treated her as if she was a treasure. When her sister was still alive, those people from Lin family had treated her extremely well. Unfortunately, the moment her sister passed away, they had intentions to send her away. The reason her sister left such a dying wish was that she was worried about her young daughter. Second, she wanted to find an excuse to bring her sister out of the family. Her sister believed that the second prince would protect her sister on her account. Ruoer, rest assured and recuperate. I won't let anything happen to you and you can stay in my estate with ease during these few days. Yu Shenxian wanted to say something but saw the man seated on her bed standing up. His originally weary face was filled with determination. Looking at the second prince, she felt touched. At the same time, she understood that the second prince treated her this way because of her sister's last words. Yet, he did not know that she had also fallen for him. Although the second prince only had her sister in his heart, she wasn't willing to marry someone who she didn't love. Therefore, she had agreed to become Princess Qi Yu's nominal mother. Once she found a man she loved, the second prince would let her go. Your Highness. At this moment, a bodyguard walked in and spoke deferentially, someone who calls himself Qi Su requests to meet you. Qi Su. Qi Lauer was startled and passed down an order, let him enter. Yes, Your Highness. The bodyguard retreated. Cough cough. Yu Shenxian coughed and sat up on the bed with great difficulty. She weakly smiled and said, Brother-in-law, who is this man named Qi Su? Qi Su is someone I encountered in the Luo Feng kingdom. The spirit-gathering medicinal liquid I have and the puppets were all obtained from him. Is that so? If that's the case, then Qi Su is very impressive. That's only natural, Qi Lauer laughed out loud. If not for Qi Su having a fiance, I would have wanted to be a matchmaker between you two. It's unfortunate. Yu Shenxian smiled and did not speak. In her life, after meeting a man like her brother-in-law, it was hard for her to fall for other men. Even if her brother-in-law couldn't forget her sister for his whole life, she was still willing to guard by his side as a sister, and that was enough. At this moment, a man and a woman walked in under the bodyguard's lead. The young man looked matchlessly handsome while his actions radiated a nobleman's manners. As for the lady by his side, the instant Yu Shenxian saw her, a trace of shock flashed through her eyes. Perhaps no one in this world wouldn't be moved by such a gorgeous woman. Chapter 1913, Four Kingdom Tournament 4. It was just that. This lady's appearance gave her a faint feeling of familiarity, as if she had encountered her somewhere in the past. Yu Shenxian tightly furrowed her brows and deeply pondered this. Qi Su pays his respects to the second prince. Qi Su cupped his fists and narrated. Young Luo Feng stood with her hands behind her back, with a light breeze blowing on her. With her fine black hair similar to a waterfall, her pitch-black eyes were deep and her figure looked aloof and unyielding. Young Master Qi, you've come from far away, but I'm not in the mood to welcome you. I'll ask you not to take it to heart. Qi Lauer smiled, and lowering his head, he noticed that Yu Shenxian was thinking. Ruoer, what are you thinking about? Yu Shenxian tilted her head. I feel that this sister is very familiar looking. I seem to have met her somewhere. Her unintentional words caused young Luo Feng's incomparably deep eyes to look at her face. Familiar? Could it be Yun Yueqing? Qi Su had also thought of this and immediately became excited. Miss, could it be that you've met my master? Qi Lauer had some understanding of Qi Su and had also heard of Yun Yueqing. Hearing them talk about this, he was shocked and looked at Yu Shenxian. Ah, I remember, Yu Shenxian shouted with an excited expression. It's my benefactor. She looks similar to my benefactor. Benefactor? Do you know what's her name? Qi Su's breathing tightened as he nervously asked. A year ago, when sister was still alive, we were chased down by someone. It was our benefactor who descended from the skies and saved us. She said that she was friends with my mother and so saved us. I also saw her half a year ago during my sister's funeral. She only took a quick look before leaving. Her mother passed away very early and they didn't know their mother had such a friend. However, it was hard for them to be suspicious of their benefactor. You and your sister were chased down before. Qi Lauer's breathing tightened and he unconsciously grabbed Yu Shenxian's hand. Brother-in-law, it hurts. Yu Shenxian slightly frowned and helplessness surfaced on her weak face. It was my sister who prevented me from revealing this. Traces of embarrassment streaked across Qi Lauer's face. He loosened his hand and said, I'm sorry, it wasn't deliberate. At this very moment, Qi Su was already incapable of freeing himself from the excitement and tears couldn't help but flow down. Master, it's Master. She's still alive, I knew it. Master must still be alive. However, why didn't she come looking for me when she's still alive? Qi Su couldn't understand this question and he simply disregarded it. There was nothing more important than his master being alive. Yun Luo Feng's eyes flickered. If Yun Yuqing was still alive, could she be Bai Ling? According to Qi Su's explanation, Yun Yueqing lost her memories. If she was Bai Ling and recalled everything, she would be in great pain after knowing about Yun Yang's death. After all, if Yun Xiao no longer existed, then her life would become meaningless. Sister, you're my benefactors. Yu Shenxian looked at Yun Luo Feng while her huge bright eyes twinkled with an innocent glint. Even though she was very weak, it couldn't conceal her former bubbly personality. Yun Luo Feng was silent for a moment. She could very possibly be my mother. Is that true? Yu Shenxian's eyes brightened and smiled. Sister, if you encounter my benefactor in the future, please thank her in my place. I'm afraid, I can no longer personally thank her. Shenxian, don't say such silly words. You will definitely be all right. Qi Lauer frowned and pretended to berate her. Chapter 1914, Four Kingdom Tournament 6. In his eyes, there was an unconcealed worry deep down. Brother-in-law, I understand my own body and I can't endure much longer. Furthermore, I only had my sister as my family. After I go down, I'll be reunited with her. Wouldn't that be better? Yu Shenxian lowered her eyes and smiled. She did not say that against her will, but these were her sincere thoughts. The only things she couldn't let go were this brother-in-law of hers and her young niece. Just as Qi Lauer was feeling worried, he heard a voice similar to the sounds of nature, causing him to suddenly stiffen. I can save her. I can save her. These 4 simple words caused Qi Laoer's heartbeat to increase. He took a deep breath and suppressed his internal emotions. Looking up at young Luo Feng, he asked, "What are your conditions?" In the beginning, he assumed that young Luo Feng was Qi's woman. It was only later that he realized he was wrong. The Qi family was destroyed by her and even the spirit-gathering medicine store belonged to her. How could she possibly willingly become Qi's woman? He didn't believe that a powerful woman like her didn't have any motive. "I want the entire Fengyun continent." Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes as her lips quirked while she faintly spoke. Qi Laoer laughed. "The Fengyun continent is so huge. Is that something you can have even if you want it?" "As long as I want it, I'll definitely have it." Young Luo Feng looked confident. "Therefore, my first step is your Tianqi kingdom." Qi Laoer was somewhat shocked. This woman's appetite was very huge, and she to swallow his entire Tianqi kingdom. More importantly, he was only a prince, and what ability did he have to give the Tianqi kingdom to her? "Miss Yun, I'm afraid you've found the wrong person. I can't give you the Tianqi kingdom." "No, you can give it to me." Young Luo Feng smiled. "As long as you ascend to the throne, you'll be able to." Qi Laoer was silent. He was silent for a long time before looking at young Luo Feng. "You mean, for me to listen to your orders and become your puppet?" Young Luo Feng chuckled. "I have sufficient puppets by my side, so what use would that be? Rest assured, I only require you to listen to my orders, but you won't be a puppet. I can guarantee this point. You can consider this first, and if you agree to my condition, I'll help you treat her. Furthermore, I'll assist you in ascending to the throne." He couldn't help but think that young Luo Feng's words were indeed very enticing. The competition for the emperor's position was very fierce, and it was hard for him to ascend the throne on his own. Furthermore, Yu Shenxian could no longer endure it. "All right, I promise you." Thinking it through, Qi Laoer looked up and said, while looking at young Luo Feng. "Brother-in-law," Yu Shenxian shouted in shock and bit on her lips. "I'm not worth it." Qi Laoer's expression became gentler. "Stop saying silly words. I promised your sister to take care of you, so how could I let anything befall you? As long as there's a chance, I will never give up." After he spoke, he looked to young Luo Feng and he questioned, "If you can cure Yu Shenxian, I'll agree to your conditions. However, I want to ask you something. There are so many princes in our Tianqi kingdom, so why pick me?" "Because out of so many princes in the Tianqi kingdom, only you wouldn't turn your back on righteousness and justice." Before coming to the Tianqi kingdom, young Luo Feng tasked Qi Su to investigate these princes. Therefore, this was also the reason why she selected Qi Laoer. Chapter 1915, 4 Kingdom Tournament 6. The person she took in could never be a heartless man. Qi Laoer was faithful to his wife, and had always been following his wife's last wishes to care for her sister even after she passed away. This was precisely the type of man she wanted to rope in. "Miss Yun, if you wish to conquer the Fengyun continent, there's an opportunity." "Opportunity?" Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes. "What opportunity?" "It would be the 4 Kingdom tournament 3 months from now. The winner will be selected to become the ruler of the 4 kingdoms." Having heard what he said, young Luo Feng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Yun Xiao would definitely participate in this 4 Kingdom tournament, and perhaps she might encounter Yun Xiao if she were to tag along with the Tianqi kingdom's troops. Thinking of this, she quirked her lips. What are the qualifications to participate in this 4 Kingdom tournament? Princes of the 4 kingdoms have the opportunity to participate. At that time, you can tag along with me. Young Luo Feng gently stroked her chin. "All right, when the time comes, inform me and I'll immediately head over." She had a premonition that she would encounter Yun Xiao in this 4 Kingdom tournament. "Miss Yun, I wish to follow you." Qi Su became excited and said, "Master would certainly be interested in this competition. If she's still alive, she'll certainly head for the 4 Kingdom tournament." Upon thinking that he could meet his master, he became excited. Qi Laoer smiled. "Miss Yun, when are you able to treat Shenxian?" Young Luo Feng was silent for a moment. "Tomorrow. I need to make some preparations before beginning her treatment." "Sure, please speak up if you require any spirit herbs and I will bring them." As long as Yu Shenxian could be cured, he was willing even if he lost his family fortune. Young Luo Feng wasn't polite with him. She would never use her own spirit herbs to treat others, and so she wrote a huge amount of herbs on a piece of paper and passed it to Qi Laoer. Qi Laoer retreated and young Luo Feng left together with Qi Su, leaving Yu Shenxian in the room. Yu Shenxian knew from the start that the reason the second prince had done so much for her was all for her sister. However, she did not feel sadness but instead felt joy. If her brother-in-law wasn't a loyal person, how could she be attracted to him? Furthermore, she did not wish for her brother-in-law to forget about her sister. Sister, if I'm able to keep my life, I will take care of Qi Yu and accompany her my whole life. Then, I'll send her off to get married. I will safeguard the second prince's estate for you and no one will have the opportunity to bully Yue. She would do this even if it delayed her own marriage. Yu Shenxian's illness was due to a type of slow-acting poison. This type of poison was more complex and normal physicians wouldn't be able to detect it. This was also the reason why no one could treat Yu Shenxian even though she was seriously ill. It required a few days to detoxify the poison. When the second prince heard that Yu Shenxian was poisoned, he immediately flew into a rage and ordered his subordinates to thoroughly investigate. However, he did not inform Yu Shenxian of this and did it behind her back. Fortunately, with young Luo Feng's treatment, the poison had been controlled and Yu Shenxian was no longer as weak as before. During this time, the Jian family did not look to cause trouble for young Luo Feng. As for Jianen, no matter how she resisted, her strength was crippled and she was taken back to the Qi family. Jian Bowen was frightened by young Luo Feng's strength and didn't even dare to utter a single word. He only hoped that this incident wouldn't implicate himself. After all, he was only a god-level cultivator and young Luo Feng had even defeated a heavenly god cultivator. Wasn't killing him be as simple as a matter of her raising her hands? Chapter 1916. Why is he here? 1. Second Prince's Estate. Yu Shenxian leaned on the bed frame, with a smile on her delicate and pretty face. Compared to before, her complexion was clearly much better. Today is the last acupuncture treatment. After this, your poison will be completely detoxified. Young Luo Feng kept the needles and glanced at the young lady as she slowly spoke. Yu Shenxian smiled. Thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I would have only lived for a few months. There's no need for thanks. This is a transaction between me and the second prince. She would treat her and assist the second prince in ascending the throne, while he would work for her. Shenxian, you've finally recovered. Qi Laoer relaxed following her recovery. In this case, at least I haven't let down your deceased sister. Yu Shenxian's expression darkened, but after seeing Qi Laoer's joyous look, a faint smile surfaced on her lips very soon. Brother-in-law, I promised my sister that I would care for Yue my whole life. Right now, I will fulfill my promise and protect her. Qi Laoer's gaze revealed his stirred-up emotions and he turned to Yun Luofeng. Miss Yun, I know you saved Shenxian because of a transaction, but I still want to thank you. If it weren't for you, At this point, this man who was already in his 30s couldn't continue speaking. His voice was somewhat choked with emotions. For this favor, he had willingly become Yun Luofeng's subordinate. Qi Ling, I'll have the spirit-gathering medicine hall provide you with sufficient spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. Furthermore, with puppets that you can pick as you wish, are you confident in obtaining the first position in this four-kingdom tournament? Yun Luofeng quirked her brow and her domineering tone was exceptionally clear within the quiet room. Qi Ling's heart suddenly thumped. If Yun Luofeng could supply an unlimited amount of medicinal liquid, it wasn't a difficult task to obtain victory in this four-kingdom tournament. Give me some time. With sufficient time, I can train an invincible troop. Good. Yun Luofeng lifted her brows. Other than spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, I also have foundation-building medicinal liquid that is suitable for people who are new to cultivation. At the same time, select some young talents and train them up. In the future, these talents will become the Fengyun continent's overlords. Previously in the Long Xia continent, Yun Luofeng had taken in a group of people that had a trash-like existence in everyone's opinion, while she was under the imperial family's monitoring. Even so, after going through her training, they had broken through to become geniuses in a short time. Throughout their transformation, the foundation-building medicinal liquid was essential. Furthermore, if these people were already geniuses, then how terrifying would their transformation be? Therefore, young Luo Feng did not boast, as there would be a day when those geniuses would become the overlords of the Fengyun continent. Qi Ling's heart skipped a beat as light blossomed in his eyes. Hearing her words, he knew that the effects of the foundational building medicinal liquid were even more powerful. Miss Yun, please hand the task of recruiting talents to me. As for the name of the group that these talents will be part of, I'll have to trouble you to think of one. Young Luo Feng pondered for a moment. Looking up the skies, a faint smile curved on her lips. Then I'll name it Feng Xiao Core. Feng Xiao Core. Qi Ling was puzzled by this name but did not question anything. Instead, he laughed. All right, then that group shall be called Feng Xiao Core. Sister, Yu Shenxian sat up from the bed while an innocent and naive smile surfaced. There's still some time before the Four Kingdom tournament. Now that I've recovered, why don't I entertain you during this time? Chapter 1917, Why is he here? 2. Young Luo Feng looked at Yu Shenxian and nodded. All right. Perhaps I can obtain more information about Yun Yueqing from her. Yu Shenxian smiled. Her smile was very innocent as her huge bright eyes were enthusiastic. Sister. Yu Shenxian slowly got out of the bed and walked to Yun Luo Feng's side. Hooking her hand through the crook of Yun Luo Feng's arm, she giggled and said, I know a restaurant with good food. I will be the host this time around and bring sister to have a taste. What do you think? Shenxian, your health. Qi Ling was somewhat worried about Yu Shenxian. Ever since her gradual recovery, Yu Shenxian was no longer a sickly beauty on the bed that looked ill. Her smile was very vibrant, tender, and charming. Brother-in-law, I've been on the bed for so many days so I should head out to take in some fresh air. You can be at ease. Qi Ling no longer said anything and sighed. Then pay attention to your safety. Young Luo Feng glanced at Qi Ling. Spotting the worry between his brows, she faintly quirked her lips. She's right. One should head out more to walk after recovering from an illness and take in some fresh air. Furthermore, with a physician by her side, would you have to worry about her safety? Qi Ling was momentarily stunned and smiled. Then I'll have to trouble Miss Yun. Shenxian, listen to Miss Yun when you're outside and don't cause trouble for her. You hear that? Yu Shenxian wittily stuck out her tongue. Brother-in-law, am I someone who only knows how to cause trouble? Be at ease, if I encounter the third prince and his gang, I will definitely make a detour. Qi Ling helplessly shook his head and no longer stopped Yu Shenxian from leaving. However, the instant they departed, Qi Ling's expression instantly darkened. How is it going? You still haven't found anything. Within the quiet room, a black figure slowly descended and said in an extremely deferential manner. Reporting to your highness, your subordinate has investigated the entire estate's rear court and didn't manage to locate the culprit. Could it be that the person who schemed against my wife and her sister isn't one of those women from the rear court? The second prince narrowed his eyes. Then expand the scope and search through the entire Tianqi kingdom. If I find out who was the culprit, I will never let them off. Qi Ling's fists heavily smashed on the wall. His expression was very unsightly as flames of fury rushed forth from his eyes. The culprit even dared to poison his family within the estate. If he found out who committed the crime, he would never let them off lightly. Outside a dazzling restaurant along the bustling streets, there was a crowd whispering to each other. That crowd encircled a young man in ragged clothing, and as his back faced Yun Luo Feng, she did not manage to make out his appearance. However, that slender and tall figure appeared very frail under this difficult situation. Stinky beggar, you're sure courageous to steal from our Tianqi restaurant. Break this stinky beggar's legs and make him suffer, make him unable to either survive or end his life. Who doesn't know this Tianqi restaurant is the third prince's property? Isn't he seeking death for daring to steal in the third prince's territory? These people's conversation traveled to Yun Luo Feng's ears and she was not affected in the slightest. After all, there were many pitiful people in this world and not everyone deserved her help. However, the fleeting moment Yun Luo Feng walked past the beggar, she subconsciously glanced at the young man. In that instant, her brows furrowed as her irises constricted. Chapter 1918, Why is he here? 3. Even though the young man was in ragged clothing, his appearance was clean and neat. His tightly clenched fists faintly trembled as if he was doing his utmost to show restraint. Perhaps noticing the astonished look from one side, the young man cast a sideways glance. The moment he saw the white-robed young lady, the young man's eyes revealed countless different emotions. Grievance and indignation, and a very heavy resentment. Young Luo Feng never expected she would encounter Mo Qiancheng at this very moment. What was more unexpected was that the young man who was once unexcelled in the world had been reduced to his current circumstances. However, young Luo Feng suddenly recalled Yun Xiao's previous words. If Mo Qiancheng encountered a life-threatening situation, his self-inflicted seal would break. At that time, this guy would certainly cause trouble for them. Therefore, young Luo Feng quickly made a decision. Sister. The instant Yu Shenxian turned back, she discovered that young Luo Feng had stopped in her tracks. Before she could further question her, she saw young Luo Feng slowly walking to the beggar. What did he steal? Just as the crowd had encircled the beggar, a wicked and chilly voice suddenly sounded, causing everyone to turn their heads. To Mo Qiancheng, this voice was similar to music and his eyes turned moist. Zhu Qian, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. I'll say it one last time. I'm not Zhu Qian, young Luo Feng evilly threatened. If you call me the wrong name again, I'll leave without a second thought. Mo Qiancheng was immediately silenced. He no longer wished to endure such days without having any strength and get humiliated by others. Right now, following by young Luo Feng's side was undoubtedly his best choice. Young Luo Feng turned towards the crowd as she repeated her question, what did he steal from you? Within the crowd, the leader was a shopkeeper. He coldly smiled. Not only did he freeload in our Tianqi restaurant, but he also stole our spirit herb. You're speaking nonsense. Mo Qiancheng became furious. I didn't freeload and I paid. That stock of spirit herb was the payment for food, yet you claimed that I stole it. Tisk, how could a beggar like you have spirit herbs? That's a huge joke, and let me tell you, these spirit herbs were stolen. Hurry and take out all the other spirit herbs, or else don't blame me for being impolite. Mo Qiancheng tightly clenched his fist as his face reddened. If it was in the past, how could I be bullied by these people? It's all Yun Xiao's fault. If he hadn't deceived me, I wouldn't have sealed my strength. Nor would I land in such a situation. Recalling the previous events, Mo Qiancheng gnashed his teeth in hatred as his resentment exploded forth. Hearing the shopkeeper claims, young Luo Feng finally understood the situation. As it turns out, this Tianqi restaurant was stealing so brazenly. She narrowed her eyes and swept across the crowd with a fake smile. Since you said that he stole these spirit herbs, do you have any evidence? The restaurant shopkeeper was startled, and he continued to speak in an overbearing fashion. As a beggar, if he didn't steal these, then where did he obtain the spirit herbs? Naturally I gave those spirit herbs to him, young Luo Feng smirked. Mo Qiancheng, it seems like it isn't safe to keep those spirit herbs with you. It's better that you return them to me. Mo Qiancheng was bewildered. When did my spirit herbs become hers? However, Mo Qiancheng obediently took out all his spirit herbs and passed them to young Luo Feng. Here you go, your spirit herbs are all here. Chapter 1919. I want to stay. 1. That's right, young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes and accepted all the spirit herbs without a hint of politeness. This can be considered returning something to its rightful owner. Yu Xuanxian stood by young Luo Feng's side and her huge eyes widened. Looking at young Luo Feng's face that revealed a big smile, she felt that her actions weren't much different than the Tianqi restaurant's shopkeeper. She seemed to be profiting from one's misfortune. The shopkeeper's eyes were locked onto the spirit herbs in young Luo Feng's arms, and he roughly swallowed his saliva. Then, he sternly shouted, so it turns out, both of you are co-conspirators. Men, arrest these two people who dared to steal spirit herbs from our Tianqi restaurant. After he spoke, the shopkeeper glanced at young Luo Feng with his head held high. You must have hidden other spirit herbs on you. Immediately hand them over and perhaps I might spare your life. Young Luo Feng glanced at the shopkeeper. There are only instances where I stole from others, and no one has successfully extorted a single copper from me. Are you sure you want to try this? HMPH. The shopkeeper snorted. My lord is the Tianqi kingdom's third prince and she's only a commoner. There's heaps of women like her on the streets that I can kill as I wish. However, on the account of her appearance, I can give her to the third prince as a gift. How dare you? Seeing that these people wanted to deal with young Luo Feng, Yu Shenxian panicked. She immediately shouted and furiously glared at the shopkeeper. Only now did the shopkeeper notice Yu Shenxian's existence, and he stared blankly for a moment. Not only was Yu Shenxian from the Lin family, she also had the second prince's estate as her backing. Thus, she wasn't someone he could offend. Right now, she was standing up for this woman. Could it be that they are acquainted? Hey, Yu Shenxian, I thought you were already dead. Why are you here? Did you recover? At this moment an eccentric voice sounded, and it gave off a very uncomfortable feeling. Young Luo Feng furrowed her brows, and saw a feminine face when she turned toward the voice. The man before her was dressed in brocade clothing, but it couldn't conceal his physique that seemed to have been drained by wine and women. His face was hollow, pale without the slightest hint of color. Sister, he's the third prince. Yu Shenxian's heart tightened as she softly explained. Previously, she promised her brother-in-law to make a detour if she encountered the third prince. Unexpectedly, they had met him by chance. Although this Tianqi restaurant was opened by the third prince, he rarely came to the restaurant as he frequented brothels instead. Yu Shenxian, why aren't you hiding at my second brother's place and dared to come out? The third prince feigned his elegant demeanor and flipped open his folding fan while revealing a sinister smile. With your parents as the matchmaker, your father has already arranged for you to become my concubine. Yet you're being so shady by staying in the second prince's estate. You think that I'm a pushover, aren't you? Yu Shenxian's heart tightened as her palms started sweating. Her small face was deathly white where there was unconcealed fear in her eyes. Young Luo Feng's gaze was on the third prince, and the warnings of Qi Su surfaced in her mind. Although the civil and military officials within this Tianqi kingdom supported the second prince to be the crown prince, the emperor was biased and had supported the third prince. Unfortunately, this third prince was mud that couldn't be shaped. Therefore, even after numerous years, neither of the princes had assumed the position of the crown prince. Furthermore, even consort Qin's son was a result of this third prince's actions. Chapter 1920. I want to stay too. If he could take advantage of that and seize the Luo Feng kingdom, the civil and military officers would then be silenced. As such, he would automatically become the crown prince. However, consort Qin was unable to achieve anything but good at spoiling things. Moreover, he had neglected the love Mu Zhenchen had for Mu Shuexin. As a result, he had lost terribly. Of course, how could a dog like the third prince who indulged in lust and pleasures think of a legitimate idea? The only thing he could take advantage of was the thing between his legs that every man possessed. Just as young Luo Feng was thinking over Qi Su's words, the third prince's eyes landed on her. In that instant, his breath was taken away and even his heart seemed to have jolted. The woman before him was purer than snow, with an extremely gorgeous appearance, capable of overturning states. Even the third prince, who had seen countless women, had never encountered such a beauty. If he could have her, he would be happy even if it was just one night. The third prince lifted his chin as he said in an overbearing tone, Yu Shenxian, it's possible if you don't wish to become my concubine. Just give this friend of yours to me. How about it? Yu Shenxian turned red from anger. In your dreams, Sister Yun is my benefactor and don't you even think of touching her. Yu Shenxian, I'm giving you face by asking you. Otherwise, do you think you can stop me? The third prince laughed in disdain. He longer looked at Yu Shenxian and lifting his hand, he was about to caress young Luo Feng's face. Beauty, on the account that you're so beautiful, I won't bother about your mistakes. As long as you're willing to serve me. Mo Qiancheng was standing beside young Luo Feng all along, and seeing the third prince's outstretched hand, flames of fury ignited in his black eyes. He suddenly sneered as mocking flooded his eyes. This bastard dares to touch her. Does he honestly not know how the word, death, is written? The third prince did not think his actions were wrong. He could have as many women as he wanted in the Tianqi kingdom, and how many of them could resist his authority? However, just as his fingers were about to touch young Luo Feng, a wicked and sinister voice that appeared to have risen from hell sounded and heavily rammed against his heart. Were you talking about me? Her voice was very cold. However, it wasn't the chilly type, but a type that contained wickedness. As long as one heard her voice, they would have a fearful and terrified feeling. Even the hand that he wanted to caress young Luo Feng's face had stopped in midair due to her voice. Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes, and looking at his outstretched hand, a chilly glint streaked across her eyes. Soon after that, she grabbed his wrists and suddenly exerted force. Ah, A blood-curdling scream echoed throughout the streets. Silence. On the street outside the Tianqi restaurant, it was totally silent, such that even the sound of a pin drop could be heard. Everyone widened their eyes. There was shock, astonishment, and disbelief. Even Yu Shenxian covered her mouth while she started trembling. Of course, she was shaking from excitement. No one had ever dared to touch the third prince in the Tianqi kingdom. After her excitement subsided, she was filled with worry. Young Luo Feng had injured the third prince and the emperor indulged him very much. Thus, he would definitely cause trouble for her. This won't do. She had to return at once to discuss this with her brother-in-law, on remedy methods. Mo Qiancheng was tranquil as a sneer surfaced on his face. For daring to touch this woman, this third prince of Tianqi kingdom must have been sick of living. Sister, Yu Shenxian tilted her head and pulled on Yun Luofeng's sleeve in worry. Return with me to the second prince's estate. The third prince will definitely seek revenge. Chapter 1921. I want to stay 3. Seemingly not hearing Yu Shenxian, she looked at Mo Qiancheng. Why are you here? After he heard her question, Mo Qiancheng revealed resentment across his face. Isn't it all because of Ji Judian, that bastard? I believed your previous words and went looking for Ji Judian. As a result, he coincidentally activated the spatial wormhole to this place. It's fine if he wanted to leave by himself, but he gave me a push before he left and dragged me to this place. Mo Qiancheng felt indignant. More importantly, I didn't get the chance to ask him anything. Ever since coming to this continent, Mo Qiancheng's days weren't smooth sailing. In addition, with his strength sealed, he had basically been fleeing for his life. Fortunately, he was lucky and found a few stalks of spirit herbs on a spirit beast's corpse. However, he hadn't expected that it would result in today's situation. Young Luo Feng spared a glance at Yu Shenxian and said, Yu Shenxian, head back first. I have to make a trip to the inn as Qi Su is still waiting for me there. Even though the second prince had invited them to enter the prince's estate, she felt that there were many inconveniences involved and so, continued staying at an inn. Yu Shenxian's mind was occupied with the third prince seeking revenge and so, did not insist on staying. She nodded and said, all right. Sister Yun, wait for me in the inn. Brother-in-law and I will think of ways to help you. After saying this, she clenched her teeth and ran towards the second prince's estate. Right now, the only person that could help Sister Yun was her brother-in-law. The instant Yun Luofeng turned around, she saw Mo Qiancheng following behind as she coldly questioned, why are you still following me? She helped Mo Qiancheng because she didn't wish for them to shoot herself in the foot and allow him to break his seal. At that time, it would bring about trouble for her. Mo Qiancheng's footsteps halted and he tightly bit his lips. Yun Luofeng, I want to follow you. He hastily stopped himself after recalling Yun Luofeng's previous words as he called out to her. Follow me. Yun Luofeng revealed a chilly smile. Are you sure you want to follow me? Mo Qiancheng's eyes twirled around. This continent is very dangerous and if you leave me alone outside, I'll definitely be chased down. At that time, if I were to break the seal by accident. Hearing his words, Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes. You're threatening me? I only wish to follow beside of you. It was a hard to come by opportunity where that bastard Yun Xiao wasn't by her side. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? It isn't impossible for you to follow me. Yun Luofeng's lips faintly curved as she revealed a wicked smile. Coincidentally, I'm lacking a servant. If you can sweep the floor, wash clothes, cook, and clean the latrine, you're allowed to stay. Mo Qiancheng was dumbfounded. It was fine for him to sweep the floor, wash clothes and cook. However, to clean the latrine. Could she tell him where exactly was the latrine? Do you remember the illusionary realm Zhu Qian left behind? I've rebuilt it and my men are all cultivating in that realm. In the future, the task of cleaning the illusionary realm every day shall be handed to you. As such, my subordinates can wholeheartedly concentrate on cultivating. Mo Qiancheng's lips twitched. However, he understood that this was the only way he could stay by her side. He took a deep breath and said, all right, I'll do it. After all, he no longer wished to continue fleeing and it was safer to hide by her side. In reality, Yun Luofeng had her own considerations for allowing Mo Qiancheng to stay. She thought about it and felt that it was the safest to have this time-ticking bomb by her side. As for everything else, it was just a punishment for him. Chapter 1922. An Emperor Shielding Shortcomings 1. Just as young Luo Feng entered Qi Su's room, she saw a subordinate of Qi family walking out. After turning back to look at that man, she shifted her gaze to Qi Su. Qi Su, how much spirit medicine does the medicine hall have? Qi Su stared blankly and replied, probably over 1,000 bottles. Alright, for the time being, the spirit gathering medicine hall will stop selling spirit medicine to the public. I want you to wholeheartedly provide medicinal liquid to the second prince's troops. Young Luo Feng's voice was very solemn, causing Qi Su to tense up. What happened? Young Luo Feng stroked her nose and answered indifferently, actually, it's not a huge problem. I just crippled the third prince. Qi Su's lips twitched and he was stunned. She crippled the third prince. Yet she actually said it wasn't a huge problem. The personality of my lord is sure similar to my master. In the past, his master would be calm and collected no matter how powerful their opponent was. It was as if she could use her hand to hold the sky even if it collapsed. Alright, I'll allocate some spirit medicine to the second prince right now. Qi Su took a deep breath as his expression was rather helpless. Besides that, young Luo Feng pointed to the young man behind her, this guy will be following you. It's fine to let him sleep on the floor. At this moment, Qi Su finally saw the silver-haired young man following behind young Luo Feng. His looks were very handsome and even his ragged clothing couldn't conceal his mannerisms. He is. Qi Su shifted his curious gaze to young Luo Feng, seemingly wanting to ask about his origins. However, he was interrupted by the young man's grieving voice before he finished speaking. I don't want to sleep in a room with a man. Young Luo Feng, I want to sleep with you. It was fine even if it was sleeping outside her room. As long as he could be near her, it was sufficient. Young Luo Feng dangerously narrowed her eyes as she evilly chuckled, do you think you have a choice? The young man was instantly silenced. His face was filled with grief as he stared at young Luo Feng, similar to a sorrowful wife. Qi Su noticed something fishy between them. In particular, the young man's expression was just like a sorrowful wife that had been abandoned by her heartless husband. Not to mention how pitiful he looked. Then, you won't secretly leave me behind, will you? The young man weakly asked. If it was in the past, he wouldn't be afraid of being abandoned. At the very most, he would chase her wherever she went. Leave you behind and let you be bullied by the Fengyun continent's experts, and then allow you to break your seal. I'm not that stupid. Young Luo Feng coldly smiled. Qi Su, the task of watching him will be on you. If he dares to do anything weird, inform me at once. Young Luo Feng slowly walked towards Mo Qiancheng. Lowering her eyes, killing intent gradually surged forth. Mo Qiancheng, I know I'm unable to kill you at this point. However, if you dare to touch Yun Xiao, I will fight it out with you even if I have to sacrifice my life and everything. She had never trusted Mo Qiancheng. The moment this young man appeared, he had wanted to kill her and Ji Jutian. If she hadn't impersonated Zhu Qian, she would have perished in his hands. It was precisely because she had impersonated Zhu Qian, which caused him to be hostile towards Yun Xiao and even wanted his life. Therefore, young Luo Feng had ordered Qi Su to guard him closely. Mo Qiancheng trembled from her words. Chapter 1923. An Emperor Shielding Shortcomings 2. Of course, it wasn't because of fear. Instead, young Luo Feng's words had hurt him. Zhu Qian was someone he didn't wish to hurt the most. Therefore, at the last moment, he had backed out. Yet, he had been locked up in the illusionary realm by Zhu Qian. Even when he attacked young Luo Feng and Ji Jutian in the past, it wasn't because of hatred but instead, blame. He blamed Zhu Qian for locking him up for so long, and not even visiting him for so many years. However, Mo Qiancheng understood. If it weren't for the mistakes he committed, Zhu Qian would not have been so cruel to him. As such, he was willing to use his entire life to compensate him. It was just that, thinking of young Luo Feng's words, Mo Qiancheng was filled with jealousy. He was jealous of Yun Xiao, as he was capable of making her give her heart to him and treat him so well. Just then, loud sounds could be heard from outside. Young Luo Feng frowned and glanced at Mo Qiancheng. Wait here, Qi Su, head out with me to take a look. Qi Su nodded and walked out together with young Luo Feng. Within the inn, a group of soldiers rushed in and encircled the entire establishment. The lead soldier was donned in armor as he looked awe-inspiring. "We're here to arrest the criminal who injured the third prince. Bystanders are to leave immediately." After he spoke, those standing near the inn had escaped in succession. At the same time, on the porch of the second floor, a white-robed lady was reflected in his eyes. The shopkeeper of Tianqi restaurant walked out from the soldiers and spotted young Luo Feng at a glance. He immediately pointed to her and shouted out loud, "It's this woman. She was the one who injured the third prince. Men, arrest this woman." The leader waved his hands and loudly commanded. In an instant, the soldiers uniformly unsheathed their weapons and attacked young Luo Feng and Qi Su, who stood on the second-floor corridor. Casting a glance at those rapidly approaching soldiers, her sinister voice soon entered everyone's ears. "That's right, I crippled the third prince. Because he deserved it." The leader nearly exploded from anger. He sneered and looked at the white-robed lady in mocking, as his eyes were filled with cynicism. "This woman dares to be so arrogant in our Tianqi kingdom. Is she truly unaware of the saying, inviting death by your own recklessness?" Seeing the soldiers rushing to the second level, those customers hiding in their rooms opened a small crack to view the outside situation. In an instant, a fiery red flame ignited from young Luo Feng's body. Soon, those flames had transformed into an 8-tailed flame fox. The flame fox spurted a fireball and the soldier rushing in the front had instantly disappeared within the flames. At the same time, countless gold-seeking hamsters surfaced and squeaked. They bit whoever they encountered and their sharp teeth ruthlessly pierced into their skin. Cha-Cha also appeared simultaneously and his huge body had pushed down the group of soldiers. With a furious shout, flames similar to a fireball spurted out and struck on their chests. Little Tree and Little Bug did not reveal themselves. To them, this level of a fight wasn't worthy of their assistance. Xiao Mo was a lazy person, and from the day he followed alongside of young Luo Feng, he had rarely participated in a fight in person. However, he had still appeared and sat on the staircase's railing while watching the show. Not to mention others, even Qi Su was stunned. He had followed young Luo Feng for a few months, but it was his first time meeting these spirit beasts. Furthermore, every one of them was very powerful. Astonishment could be seen on the leader's face as cold sweat trickled from his forehead. He clenched his teeth and said, "Rotten girl, this is the Tianqi kingdom and you've injured the third prince within our territory. The emperor will never let you off. Everyone, withdraw." Chapter 1924. An Emperor Shielding Shortcomings 3. Thinking of leaving, seeing that the leader was about to leave, young Luo Feng's lips faintly curved. "Is my place somewhere you can come and go as you wish?" Boom. A powerful pressurizing aura pressed over, causing the leader to tremble and immediately fall to the ground. Sweat covered all over his body and his complexion was deathly white. "What do you want? Kowtow and admit your mistakes. A soldier can be killed but not humiliated." The leader was unyielding as his face turned red with anger. "Is that so? I'll end your life then." Young Luo Feng swiftly unsheathed her long sword. With a smooth motion it struck toward the leader's head. The leader wet his pants in terror and hastily kowtowed. "Hero, I know my mistakes. Please let me off." How can dignity be compared to life? There was nothing more important than keeping one's life. The long sword suddenly stopped and the sharp edge was only a millimeter away from his neck. If he was a second later in admitting his mistakes, it probably would have been a bloody scene. Even so, the leader was still pale from fright. He felt so close to the death god, to the extent breathing became difficult. "Speak, who sent you here?" Young Luo Feng slightly looked up. The third prince's subordinates shouldn't be at this standard. Although the third prince was useless, the emperor indulged him. So, he would have dispatched elites to protect the third prince. These soldiers were only ordinary and they were extremely weak. It's the Jian family's second miss. She came to complain, claiming that you injured the third prince. To curry favor with the third prince, I acted on my own initiative." Jian family's second young miss. Jian Yi. Young Luo Feng narrowed her eyes. From how things looked, the Jian family was also at the Tianqi restaurant that day. At that time, she only noticed Mo Qiancheng and did not notice anyone else's existence. Thinking of this, young Luo Feng surveyed her surrounding and spotted Jian Yi from the crowd. Jian Yi's expression turned pale from fright as her whole body slightly shivered. Even though these soldiers were weak, Jian Yi never expected that young Luo Feng would have the courage to threaten them and force them to reveal her identity. The funny thing was, Jian Yi forgot that since young Luo Feng dared to hit the third price, what else wouldn't she dare to do? Having a good brain was indeed a good thing, but unfortunately, not everyone possessed one. After noticing young Luo Feng looking at her, Jian Yi was frightened and wanted to escape. However, the instant she turned, a flame-like figure blocked her pathway. A little loli in red looked at her while giggling. "My master didn't ask you to leave, so who allowed you to go? Get lost!" Jian Yi furiously shouted, wanting to hit the little loli as she raised her hand. Hearing her words, the little loli's expression sank. Her fist struck Jian Yi with a bang and caused her to crash into the inn where she coincidentally landed beside young Luo Feng. From the start, Hua had appeared as an eight-tailed fox. As a result, Jian Yi didn't expect in the slightest that this loli before her was that fierce flame fox from the past. Jian Yi rubbed her aching arm and wanted to get up. However, the moment she looked up, she received a bone-chilling gaze. In that instant, her mind exploded. Young Luo Feng crossed her hand and gazed at Jian Yi with a devious smile. "I knew that the Jian family wouldn't leave this matter alone. I never expected that they would use such a foolish method. Could it be that you thought these soldiers could subdue me?" Chapter 1925. An Emperor Shielding Shortcomings 4. Jian Yi inferred another meaning from young Luo Feng's words. This woman had never once regarded the Jian family of any threat all along. Not exterminating their Jian family that night wasn't because she feared the imperial family. Instead, she did not believe that the Jian family could cause trouble for her. Jian Yi started panicking. She clearly knew of her father's hatred for young Luo Feng, but she had a feeling that the Jian family was incapable of winning against her. No, not only the Jian family. Perhaps even the imperial family wasn't her opponent. In her whole life, Jian Yi had only been clever this single moment. Even so, it was too late. Qi Su, head over and inform the Jian family. In exchange for Jian Yi's life, have them hand over 2 spirit herb mountains. Didn't the Jian family covet the Qi family's spirit herb mountains? Then right now, she would have Jian Bowen give up 2 mountains and personally deliver them to her hands. Qi Su hesitated and he questioned, would someone as greedy as Jian Bowen agree to these conditions? Young Luo Feng smiled and said, he will agree to it. The reason is that he only has Jian Yi left, who is somewhat valuable. Although Jian Yi was brainless, she had above-average looks. Among the Jian family's 3 daughters, one was dead and the other crippled. Only Jian Yi was left intact and alive. If Jian Bowen wanted to use his daughter to exchange for a greater profit, he would certainly be willing to part with 2 spirit herb mountains. Hua, watch over Jian Yi with the hamster tribe. Don't let her escape. After passing down her orders, young Luo Feng sent Cha back to the God Code world while she returned to her room. At this very moment, she wasn't aware that a violent storm had arisen within the Tianqi Kingdom's assembly. Golden Imperial Palace Hall. Qi Bei sat upright on the dragon seat with a solemn expression and his eyes were stern and sharp. Lauer, where is that woman who injured Lao San? Immediately hand her over. Qi Ling kept a straight face and said, Imperial Father, this matter is Lao San's fault. If he hadn't insisted on molesting Miss Yun, she wouldn't have retaliated. Insolent, Qi Bei sternly rebuked. As the prince, what fault does Lao San have? In my opinion, that woman must have been wanton. A fly doesn't bite uncracked eggs, and if it weren't for her loose behavior, why would Lao San even look at her? In Qi Bei's eyes, when a man took fancy to a woman, it was all because of the woman's wanton ways. Otherwise, why didn't the third prince molest others but only insisted on taking advantage of her? Wasn't it all because she had seduced the third prince? The civil and military officers sighed and shook their heads with disappointment showing on their faces. Even though the emperor wasn't considered wise in the past, he hadn't been so muddle-headed and tyrannical. Right now, his actions had thoroughly broken everyone's heart. Qi Ling clenched his fists. He knew that his imperial father was biased, but never expected it was to this extent of not differentiating between right and wrong. Imperial father, don't tell me, you think that it's a woman's mistake for looking beautiful. It's their looks that caused a man's licentious behavior. However, the man is innocent in this situation and it's the woman's fault. Qi Ling coldly chuckled. Then how could any woman in the world be innocent? Can you tell me why they have to bear this unreasonable criminal charge? Your Majesty, just as Qi Bei wanted to speak, a beautiful woman sobbed spasmodically as she spoke. You have to get justice for my son. I understand my imperial son's personality the most. He's obedient and well-behaved and he would never commit such indecent acts. Someone must have framed him. Looking at his beloved concubine sobbing, Qi Bei's heart softened. His sharp gaze shot towards Qi Ling. Lauer, I know you've always refused to acknowledge your little brother. However, the state preceptor has mentioned before that Lao San's future is limitless and he will certainly attain the throne in the future. He will also lead our Tianqi kingdom to unify the four kingdoms. Therefore, as his elder brother, not only are you unhelpful, you're even colluding with outsiders to plot against his life. Exactly what evil intentions are you harboring?